for the full construction lifecycle management. We'll give a quick minute for everyone to come on in, and then we'll hop to it. We've got a pretty packed agenda, and this is really going to show just kind of the art of the possible and a lot of different applications of how you can leverage Smartsheet and your use across different stages inside construction. So we'll give a quick kind of housekeeping here in a second as most roll through, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. So just to quick set the agenda and the pace, we'll go through some quick intros and some housekeeping, and we're going to showcase high level some visual components of what you can do. Again, we're focusing on kind of the estimation and bid management process. We'll be looking at different tools or templates that you may be using today, or just to kind of give you some inspiration to how to kind of manage office operations, whether that's with your BIM or detailing team, project management, maybe on the prefabrication if you do things like that, and then field kind of management, possible some procurement items as well with material requests and release, and then kind of the closeout and the operations, which is, how are we leveraging the data that we're collecting from these solutions. Then at the tail end of the session, we're going to open up the floor for questions from the audience. No question's a dumb question. If you want to go back and see some of the content, maybe some workflows, we may have enough time to do that, but happy to kind of get some designs and inspiration. So just again, some quick housekeeping towards the tail end of the session. Inside our team session live, we are recording this, so it will be made available after the session today for your review. After this, and then if there's any questions during the call, kind of in the top right menu of the webinar, there's a little Q&A section. Go ahead and click that button and ask your question. Our team will try to respond to those live, and then certainly at the end is kind of a round table. And if there's no questions that we get to immediately, we're happy to kind of answer those afterwards, an offline sync, or work with the accounts team there. So again, in this one, this is really an inspiration session. So what you see are a couple variations to kind of give you some thoughts, and maybe there's some tips and tricks that you pick up from here that you could bring to your world within. So without further ado, just a brief overview about myself. Chris Mondeau, I work with Optimum. We're an IT consulting firm, but I come from a background of construction and engineering. I've been through a various kind of realm of experiences, from being a field technician, doing concrete and soil samples, logging data and submitting reports back to the office, to having worked as a draftsman, doing BIM coordination, clash detection, all that fun jazz, creating bill of materials, spool drawings, and fabrication packets for the guys in the shop, in the field. And then throughout that cycle, started to work through several different teams, all the way from working with the estimators to kind of build out some estimation and calculation solutions, to procurement with materials management, project and operations, and others. So I've got some context, I've lived the life, and I've kind of moved into sharing that knowledge and my experience into the Smartsheet platform. So we're going to go quick because there's a lot to kind of go through, and really want to make sure we give you guys times to ask questions within. So just as a quick visual kind of appetizer for you to see what we're working through, we're going to look at how you can leverage, maybe take off data from on-screen tools like Bluebeam or others to pull into Smartsheet to collaborate and report on your work. This is specifically for Bluebeam, highly popular tool that I'm sure most of y'all are using or are aware of. Then we're going to move into some of the construction operations that I might classify, when work is in progress. So things like project schedules, RFIs and submittal lists, materials management, maybe tracking prefabrication or drafting within. And then we're going to wrap up on, what to do with the data that you have. So closeout and reporting, we'll look at some charts and graphs and AI analysis within the context, which again, you might be leveraging inside of your solution today. So we're going to go right into it as promised. I'm a big visual guy, so bear with me as I swap screens, and we're just going to show the full solutions. All right. So we're going to begin here, and We'll just check to make sure that we're all set within sharing in Bluebeam. And Gabby might want to confirm with you, make sure this is visible for everyone so we can see that. If you can just give me a quick yes or no, make sure we're good for the group.
I cannot see your screen actually.
All right, perfect. So glad we checked. And here we are. How about now? Perfect. Wouldn't be a live demo if there weren't some glitches from here. So should have Bluebeam up and running. Gabby, just double check on that. Perfect.
Looks good.
So by no means am I a Bluebeam master by any means. I'm a little rusty on the exact technical components, but what I wanted to kind of showcase are some of the tools available within the platform to get the information out and into maybe an ecosystem like Smartsheet to leverage your tools a bit more. So I've just got a drawing pulled up today. I've got some preloaded markups inside of the drawing. There's a variety of these from, quantities, kind of linear counts or takeoffs, areas and regional markups within. Of course, within Bluebeam, we can actually pair and create data associations within these. So I could create a custom toolbox for maybe certain systems or services or items. Maybe it's things like equipment like air handler units or security cameras, door locks, actuators, plumbing, piping, etc. Right? If you're making a markup in Bluebeam, what it does is it's storing that information in the markups table from below. So as you're maybe doing your takeoff and your edits in the actual drawing, it's creating a list of those markups with that information. So I can see things like, cat cables or different equipment stuff, exhaust fans, based on that visual representation. Now, inside this markup list, you're seeing other things like lengths, volumes, areas, counts for those. So these markups carry attributes with information that we can pull out and load into Smartsheet. And there's a variety of ways to do that. But from the markup list, you can actually export this out to a CSV file, and that will give you this full table here kind of in the bottom with that data. Now, once it's in Excel or in that file, the sky's the limit. Of course, you can do markups or editing or kind of your calculations inside Excel, but maybe you want to have multiple people collaborate on doing an estimate, aggregating that information and kind of bringing it to life within maybe a bid or a proposal. So I'm going to switch back over to Smartsheet now and kind of show what that workflow might look like. So we've exported our takeoff from Bluebeam. I've got some of that information synthesized in just in a really basic sheet. And I can do that just by uploading that Excel file into the row. And this is where I would leverage a tool called Data Shuttle. Now, you don't have to use Data Shuttle. I could copy and paste that information in straight, or I can import a sheet from an Excel file loaded into the tool. There's lots of ways to get that information into the platform. But Data Shuttle is nice because it allows you to take external data, and that can be things from a takeoff, or it might be information from your financial tools, or maybe you're using a bid information to load it in. And then it will automatically take that data from the file and map it into your existing sheet structure. So we're going to go through just kind of a high-level configuration just to show you the art of the possible and what this tool looks like in. So in my workflow, essentially I'm monitoring for when the new attachment is provided. So again, I'm exporting that markup file from Bluebeam, attaching it into a Smartsheet row. And then from there, I basically choose what I want to do. So I can replace all data inside of that sheet. I can merge it off of a primary ID. So maybe you're adding in new markups over time or update drop-down choices. This isn't applicable for our needs here. A couple other options. There's things like filters. So if I want to filter by maybe only doing the estimate for the first floor, I can. Just some logical operators. But this is kind of the bread and butter of Data Shuttle, at least, is the mapping items. So this is giving you a no-code interface to take information from your source file, which is our Bluebeam markup list, and then mapping it to the existing sheets I have in Smartsheet. So it's just a menu picker. So you can grab, maybe it's named floor or area instead of floor level to pull it into an exact kind of mapping. So again, if the information is in Excel, we'll load it into the sheet. There are things we can run to run on attachment or periodically run it on schedules. So this is less applicable for things like estimating, but if you're doing things like maybe importing time cards that you want to report on a data set in Smartsheet, maybe you want to export this from your time tracking system to pull into your project reports, or it might be bid information or job profile information that you can pull on a scheduler cadence. So it's giving you some flexibility to get that data in. Input expressions are ways to kind of modify that information, but that really is just a way to get it into the tool. So once we import that in, again, it's not really usable in this format other than we have the data inside Smartsheet now. So how can we manipulate this further? And what I've got over here is what I'm calling my estimate sheet. Now, I've taken that takeoff sheet and I've processed this in a pivot. So I'm aggregating that information. In my case, I'm doing my estimate by floor level, area, and then maybe by system. You can choose whichever way you want to slice and dice and mix that information. So if you want to do it by just floor or by material type, you can choose and define that order. I'm doing that with Smartsheet's Pivot app, which again is a way to take off data and then transpose it into maybe a more usable format from here. Next in this, what you can do is maybe start getting your quotes or your costs. And I've got a couple ways that I'm doing that in this solution. What I have here is my material code. And this could be loaded in from, if you're storing that as a property within your Bluebeam toolbox for that markup, we can reference that code. We could reference things like the description or the name. Maybe you're doing takeoff from, Autodesk, for example, doing an on-screen from there and then getting the information. What we can do from this is we can actually return relevant fields from maybe another database. So things like the estimated crew size to install that component, or what's the installed cost per unit, labor costs, etc. In this case, I've written a formula that is referring to a database or a pricing matrix. And I've got one here just called PVF price book. But this is, excuse me, just a lookup or an index. Now, if you're not savvy at writing in these formulas, Smartsheet's released a great new feature over in the new table view, if you haven't explored that yet. And that is called the link column data. And essentially what the linked column data is it's a way to quickly look up information from other sheets. So I'm referring my item code again, which is this item in the first column, and matching it into my estimate sheet. So it's a fancy version of like a VLOOKUP or an index match, but it's just this kind of target mapping. So if there's other properties that I wanted to pull in, I can select that and merge that into my sheet. So that's what I'm doing here with kind of these other columns all the way up through at least the material costs, is that's giving me my reference. Now, maybe I wanted to go out and send this, out to bid, maybe working with some of the suppliers that I have. I've already got some values loaded in here, but you can do things like share this entire sheet to a preferred supplier or a vendor. In this case, maybe you're working with Wind Supply or Ferguson or ABC Co., and you want them to give them their pricing. They can collaborate live in the sheet with you. When they're updating their costs for those materials, they can go in and maybe they're charging $100 for this galvanized pipe or angle iron, and load that in. Alternatively, you could set up an automation to maybe check that box, and that can send them an alert to request that they update that pricing information for you as well. There's lots of different things you can kind of continue to add into this sheet. But as a user is collaborating in here, you start to see kind of the real-time estimate start to be built. I can choose which supplier I want to award to this item. I can see who's the lowest supplier based on this initial cost. So again, it's ways to get that information in and usable. Now this is great because this is the data layer, right? So I can build my estimate, see what it might cost for the project. Of course, there's an error here because this is just, it's reference information. But what are you doing from the actual grid? Maybe you want to represent that information as a whole. So that's where we can actually source a dashboard feeding from that estimate sheet and kind of have an alternative way to consume that information. So, what's the total load, at least by system, cost within those systems, distribution by floor level or area type, and more. So again, it's just taking that information from those sheets and bubbling it up through a series of reports to build out from a dashboard. Great. So that's a potential estimating use case. Again, I said we're going to go fast, so we're going to move on to the next one, but we can certainly leave some time in the back to kind of wrap up with questions there. So just as a recap, we're taking markup information from an external tool, in this case Bluebeam, loading it into a Smartsheet with Data Shuttle, leveraging Pivot App to kind of aggregate that information in my estimate table, and then consuming that data either as a report or within these graphical interfaces. So next up, project operations. So another kind of heavy content in this one. This is leveraging a tool called Control Center. You don't have to have Control Center, but it's a really good mechanism to create a standardized project template for you to manage work in. So what I have here is what I'm calling a project intake. This might be high-level project information. So project name, potential project manager, bid statuses. If we're doing estimating, if it's awarded, we might be in the actual construction phase here. What this sheet does is it's containing high-level project information. Now, many of you may be using things like SharePoint right now to create a project folder that has things like an Excel file for an RFI log or a punch list item, or things like your shop drawings or your submittal packages. That can work. You can maintain that, but it's harder to get that information out in a usable format to all users, including folks like users in the field. Smartsheet's really good at creating a standard template that's accessible on web and on mobile in that format. So instead of on SharePoint, you could consider moving that into a Smartsheet-based template, which will look out from here. So this intake is just a kind of a first phase in the step. So from intake, we can check a box basically if I want to create this project. You could set up an approval workflow if you wanted to. But what we're doing in the back end via Control Center is spitting out a project template. And once that template's completed, it will give you kind of a link to open up that project within. I'm going to go ahead and load up this this demo here. But when I create that project, it's going to automatically spit out this project template. So I've chosen to have my landing page be kind of a project portfolio kind of dashboard. So this is showing me all the insights for this project specifically. I'm pulling over things like the initial project main, key contacts, and then bubbling up that information from the underlying objects to this view. So I can see percent complete, percent to plan, statuses of my RFIs, maybe the budget management inside of the tool, change orders, submittal, punch list. The sky's really the limit. It just is, what are the templates and the tools that you want to use to manage your work effectively, and then present that to the end users. So again, lots of different things in here, things like manpower, daily reports, safety incidents, reporting, etc. Now I will call out over on this left rail here, when I created that project, it created this whole workspace. So kind of alluding to SharePoint, if you have that project folder that a user is copy pasting and you have to navigate, which sheet, which version of Excel, or which file am I in? Since it's now in Smartsheet, it's live. It's one system. Every project that I provision is going to have the same template. So it's always going to have a drawings log. It's always going to have a budget, a schedule, etc. Now these are project specific. So everything in here is just for this P0037 CSUSM kind of sample within. And that's how work kind of begins. So we'll kind of briefly go through some of these templates, again, give you maybe some thoughts to consider within. Things like a budget. Now I can start with kind of a real base level budget in here, track my cost codes, build up my plans. Similar to like we did in estimation, if you have a budget that's generated somewhere else, we can import that budget with Data Shuttle as well. So we kind of referenced that, create a Data Shuttle flow, alluding in again to the estimate. I could upload that Excel file sheet. It will load it in here. I can track this by cost code, track my project variances, maybe for the committed costs or pending costs from change orders to build it in within the sheet. Now, once it's in Smartsheet, that's where you can leverage things like conditional formatting to highlight things like the variances for the budgets, or to create any kind of automations that you might want to send out overages or alerts or close thresholds within. We'll touch on this on a couple of the other templates further. Things like change orders, of course, can be managed inside of Smartsheet. So again, lightweight samples, your change order logs might look similar or different. In this case, I'm also tracking things like, the potential impact on both cost or on duration, setting up approval workflows for my team to go work through. And of course, in Smartsheet, you're storing the data not only in the grid, but also I can upload those files that might give me the context for that change order more specifically. So we're keeping centralized in the tool and in the platform. Again, this is great for guys in the field because they don't have to go, download a copy of the file or the version of it and hunt through a SharePoint kind of navigation. It's in context for them. And since it's live, both users in the field or in the office can start to collaborate and communicate in. If I had a question on this change order, I can come in and at mention, maybe I'll say hello to one of my buddies, Jimmy, help me out. And he'll get an alert on his computer, on his phone. If he was awake this morning, he might kind of ping me live and let me know and see the live collaboration. But, kind of like this, I don't have to send an email. I don't have to send a text. I always have the reference back inside of the tool. Some other variations, again, just kind of giving you kind of the art of the possible. Things like daily progress reports. This is kind of the back end or the sheet that would look like. But if I'm a technician or a guy out in the field, I can open up this web form and have it accessible on my phone. Smartsheet has an offline mode for forms. So if you're in a poor cellular or Wi-Fi area, you can save these forms to offline mode and then fill out those information. So I can upload things like dates, summary of work performed, what contractors are on site. If I'm tracking time, and as an example, I can load that in. Track weather, issues encountered, crew size, etc. Select which equipment that I might have seen, and maybe upload work progress photos right from that form. And when I submit this, that will log straight back to my daily progress report as a record of entry. Again, we're in per project kind of tracking, so I've got a full audit and history of progress on work. And so from this, we can actually do additional things, like maybe build out a schedule of values and track the work complete from things like daily. So those are some more advanced use cases, but that's certainly within the realm of possibility within. So again, just a couple samples. So we'll talk about things like the safety logs, again, give you some flair, some flavor within. You kind of notice a trend, at least in these kind of templates, is they're simple, but you can go much more complex if you'd like. So again, tracking in dates, updating statuses, adding in automations where needed. And that moves us into the next segment, which is RFIs, some folks' favorite items. So flat log, simple log, but maybe you needed to create the actual RFI template. And that might be creating a whole new Word document or trying to fill out a PDF with information. For those that haven't explored some of the automations in Smartsheet or some of the advanced things like document generation, this is going to be a great application for you. So I have a really lightweight RFI log tracking the description, who's submitting it, when the response is needed. I built a formula here to kind of track the age of that RFI. I can pair that with automations to let me know when it's past due or causing some impacts on the job. But maybe I wanted to actually generate the RFI itself. And I can do so by either setting an automation or using this generate documents. And what this will do is it's going to give you the ability to kind of create a document mapping. Bear with me, I'm actually going to go into my template, since this has the workflow, to kind of create that RFI mapping field. So generate my docs. And what you can do in Smartsheet is if you have a fillable PDF, essentially you can take your cell data from that sheet and then map that into these PDF fields. So I'm just dragging my columns in Smartsheet into a fillable PDF. You can make this PDF as pretty or as ugly as you'd like, but when I create this mapping, I can save this, and then I can create an automation inside of that sheet to say, generate an RFI, or as soon as a new row is entered in on that RFI sheet, it would automatically create that document in the workflow. So if we get this to load up here, we create the automation, and then it will automatically take the information from this row. So things like the RFI ID I have, the date submitted, the statuses, priority, impacts, and I can run that automation in here. So here's an automation workflow. So in this case, I'm doing it as soon as it's entered in. When a new row is added or changes and the status is open, generate that document from that template that I had showcased within. I'm not going to edit this, so we'll just close this. We'll go back to the sheet. And then I can click kind of run and process. And when that makes it run, it's going to automatically take, again, the row or the cell information. I've got the world's most beautiful RFI template and load it into that sheet. So again, these are things you can use for RFIs. They could be for submittals or change orders. Could you even use this for things like work order tickets or to create a PDF version of maybe that daily report for that progress? If the information's inside Smartsheet, you can load it into tools like these. So again, expanding on kind of the use case and application, at least within the tool itself. We'll kind of wrap up on the project schedule, which is really the heartbeat of many projects within. Show you a couple of features that you either are using or may not be using to explore yet. This is a very lightweight construction schedule. Now, there's a common theme here. If you're maybe you're working with a GC or another trade or sub, and they've provided you a new updated schedule. If you get that schedule in Excel or Microsoft Project, I'm going to loop back around to that data shell feature. We can actually import that into the schedule to update. So that's one way to kind of have a live or dynamic schedule. Of course, you can always share these schedule templates with the folks that you're collaborating with, and they can update the workflows within here. But a couple things I wanted to call out, at least in this template, are things like setting baselines for these projects. So your tasks, you can do it by phase, you can do it by substantial milestones, set key contacts or assignments. But if I enable baselines, what that will do is it will snapshot my original dates from the schedule and then give me a couple of new columns, a baseline, start, and finish, as well as a variance. And I can use that in automations or workflows to send out alerts, send out approvals if there's a requested date change to one of my schedule items. And of course, since this is a data component where I'm tracking in variations in days at least, I can start to use that for project reporting and kind of analysis, and then a graphical representation of that on my project schedule view. So the baselines, you can toggle this on or off if you want to have this ghosted image. I can reset the baselines if I'd like, but that's giving me kind of a, how am I doing? Where am I going from? We can report on this back up to talk about from a whole. So the project schedule is really valuable. If you are looking for additional things like maybe tracking resource capacity and availability, Smartsheet has a great tool that kind of bolts into the project schedule. That's resource management and or workload tracking. Essentially what that does is it's looking at your scheduled activity and assignment as well as allocation. And this is just a representative of X% of hours per day. So if I'm doing 100%, that's 8 hours per day in my workload. I can set this up, and if we get this rocking here, we should see a heat map kind of show up of at least this team's resourcing and availability within. So it's a kind of per project snapshot view. I can see, again, maybe my project managers, my engineers, if I'm working with some other team members, who's over or under allocated. I can go in a larger view and kind of see some more granular details. Maybe it's the projects or activities he's working on. And then there's a larger version of this as a whole to view maybe the entire team's kind of portfolio of work. That's more than enough content for a whole nother session, but the nice thing with this is it's just reading information from your schedule. So maybe as the field is updating their 3-week look-aheads, updating the scope of work that they're doing at today, they can certainly just update the data inside Smartsheet on their phone or on their computer, and you can start to get some of these additional views to show you how work is being performed. Kind of as a plug, I'm talking about this project schedule more from a human or a resourcing standpoint. But if you're doing things like tracking prefabrication or materials management, you could substitute these human users or these named contacts with maybe production lines or fabrication facilities. And you can see the load of work that those might be tracking over time as well to either maybe open up a new shift, change maybe a hot job request, and push in from there. So again, lots of arts of the possible and Sonic components within here. I'm going to a quick deviation from this, and we're going to talk about materials management and maybe production, and then we'll kind of wrap up on some of the analytics and insights. So kind of related to that fabrication, I've got a spool log. This is a potential variation that you might have in your organization. In this case, I'm just tracking in maybe, what's the floor level area system? What are the spools in here? Tracking in when my guys in the field are requesting that work package to be delivered. In my case, I've kind of uploaded some images. This is basically what is that material that's going to be delivered for installation. It's giving them a quick reference. So whether on their phone or on their computer, if I need floor level area A, I can request when that material needs to be delivered by. That can alert maybe my BIM team or my production manager to say, yep, Chris is requesting that the mechanical system is, needs to be accelerated for, this week's install. This is giving them not only the context of those spools, but if I wanted to see things like the shop drawings or the cut list, the materials list for procurement, you can store all of that inside of the sheet. So something like this is very often edited and maybe managed by the BIM team, or if you have a dedicated spooler to prep. You can leverage things like exporting out a master log from things like AutoCAD or Revit, load it in with Data Shuttle. If I'm picking favorites, Data Shuttle is probably mine. I've talked about it enough today. But it's a way for, again, you to enter the information, start to collaborate with users inside of Smartsheet, and starting tracking and managing work. I've got a couple other columns in here. You're seeing things like BIM assigned or Fab assigned or purchasing assigned. This is, again, a way that you can tie this to resource management to maybe track the capacity of your BIM teams, your detailers, or the production cycles as well. So it doesn't have to be a construction schedule in the traditional sense. It can just be a task that's assigned within certain dates, and then maybe a level of effort within from here. Now in Smartsheet, there's all sorts of views. So there's a card view, there's a Gantt view, a table view. There's also this newer timeline view. So it's an alternative way of grouping that information. So maybe I wanted to see what my team is working on by floor level and system in the next coming weeks. This project's a little bit in the past, but I can change the grouping of this information to show maybe by floor level system, or maybe I want to change it by where material is going to be kind of stored at, or who my status of this work is coming in from. So you can kind of toggle these views and aggregate it in to view kind of that next production schedule. Production, whether it's detailing or the actual prefab or even installation of materials kind of within. And if I wanted to do the details of those requests, I can click in on this chart and kind of see all the content within. So really, it's the scale and flexibility of both the interface and the type of work that you're managing within here. Now, wrapping up on materials, everyone always needs material, whether it's the BIM team or if it's the guys in the field for maybe a hot request, or they want to hold or release material for release. This is an option that you could certainly consider for managing these requisitions. So if I'm a field user, I can fill out a web form for a new material request. I'm not going to open up that form specifically, but kind of like the project template that we've had, I've got a material request. And so I've got, maybe what is the name of this request. Maybe I'm getting some firewall updates for this job. We can limit that information, of course, with drop-down lists. And just as a new plug, if you really haven't tried playing out with the new table view, certainly consider it, because there's some new updates that you can use, things like pulling in job name. Traditionally, you may always have to manage things from a detailed drop-down list, but there's a new option here that I want to call out. It's called a link to another sheet. And if you click this, you can either paste a link to maybe a master job list or open up a kind of navigation. And then I can come through and look at maybe, oh, let's see if I can do this live here, my project intake, and I can pull the list of all project names from another sheet. So now I can have a master job list that is now dynamically referencing the values into my intake. So now we're reduced the amount of administration and kind of updates for you to kind of manage these jobs. So before I had that short list, now I have a much longer project list. Again, this is pulling from my job details. You can use this for things like referencing jobs or shop drawings or submittal packages. If you're correlating those to RFIs, what's the spec sections or references that might be applied. So if you haven't tried the new table view, check it out, because some of these updated features like the linked columns or this kind of dynamic updates are where you're going to see some of those tools and components. Enough about that. So this is just kind of a quick order. So how do I view the detailed line items? Well, leveraging Control Center or maybe the new portfolios, which are in kind of a EAP, I can create a request specific template where if I open this template up, it's going to bring me down into kind of the line item quantity workbook where I can say, what material do I want? How much do I want it? Is it okay to kind of reserve or pull in? And that's going to aggregate up into kind of work. So again, I've created that kind of shopping cart or that order and that requisition. And then I'm presented with my specific line items or orders. I've got this item list where I'm pulling from my own product catalog or category. This is actually connected all the way back to the estimating stage of what I've talked about in that pipe, valve, and fitting database. This is my materials database that I'm referring to. So there's things that you can create. Maybe it's a standard assembly or core materials that you're always kind of picking from the field. A user would be able to kind of quickly come into a workbook or a form, select what item they need, what quantity they need from these items. If I'm pulling from a product database, it may return some part numbers. This can be really valuable if you're trying to build out this purchasing request and send to your supplier for kind of a bulk order. You can actually store their codes in and shorten that cycle for them to translate your material orders and send them back. And I'm carrying other metadata information over here. So things like job name, job number, the release type, standard. That information is already coming from that intake sheet, that requisition, to make that work. And so I've got all these requisitions. So I've got my O2 requisition, O3 requisition. They're all the same format. Of course, what information, how users want to select those in changes as those orders come through. But if I'm working on the procurement side and I want to see all materials, that's where I can come over to maybe a master material report. I'm leveraging, again, in this case, Control Center, but you can create a report that's sourcing multiple sheets. And this is going to be aggregating every single one of those material line items into a master. So maybe I have, 3 foremen on the job site. Maybe my detailers are putting in material requests for their spools. We can aggregate this in for procurement. They can group this for the project. Maybe if they want to make this material to purchase and then hold for near or future work, if it's a standard release, I can. And then I can release this to my suppliers either by sharing them to the sheet, or I can send this as an Excel file or send it as an attachment with this. And of course, I can pick my guy, John Doe at Ferguson. He can get this file. That's it. So I'm simplifying and streamlining the process from users making these material requests within. All right, last item, and then we'll kind of talk from here. So this is kind of on the data and analytics. We showed kind of that project snapshot and dashboard. Inside of Smartsheet 2, we've got all these templates back on the project operations side. So from my budgets, from my materials, from my fabrication, what we can actually do is I've created what I'm calling a metadata sheet. And this essentially is a place for me to collect certain measures. So maybe I'm tracking on-time task completion, or my budget runs, open submittals or RFIs, progress updates, etc. This is kind of a live sheet. So the values here are contributing to those metrics and the widgets on my dashboard. But maybe I want to track that information over time and see how it's progressing. Because Smartsheet's more of a live system, I can take snapshots of this. And what I've done is I've just created a snapshot column and an automation that basically says every week. I could do this every day if I wanted to, but weekly is fine for my use cases. It's just to take a snapshot, and I'm just copying the rows that I'm identifying from this metrics or this metadata sheet to a snapshot sheet. Now, this doesn't really look fancy, and it's not meant to be fancy, but what it's doing is it's capturing every week those key measures that I want to track on my project over time. And then what I'm able to do with a long series of data like this is to build out those historical reports or trends. And so what I've done on this dashboard is I've just created a whole bunch of kind of graphics that is looking at that snapshot sheet and showing me these measures over time. So milestone progress, on-time reports, change orders, etc. And if I wanted to create more widgets, I certainly can. All of these widgets are AI built. So these are ones that, if you haven't played with Smartsheet's AI tools, are native. And I'll show you quickly how to create one. So I'm going to go back to this snapshot sheet, and I'm going to use the generate tools with AI, our analyze data. There's a whole bunch of others, but this analyze data has gotten a lot of updates as one of the more powerful ones. So if I wanted to kind of see information, it's basically going to look at the data from your sheet and give you recommendations. So I could track RFI count over time, and I'll just click that. It'll churn, it's looking at the information, and it should generate for me, if we're lucky today on the demos, this is kind of an ugly chart of sorts. You might need to massage a little bit, but it's building you that kind of graphic. Now, I can choose to group this by month, do some filters. You can also ask the AI to build kind of your own custom data. You don't have to use a prompt. And then, again, maybe I'm doing that milestone progress over time again. If I wanted to add this chart that's been built, once that's completed, I can just come over here and add to dashboard, and I can add it to my trends dashboard or my project dashboard if I'm looking for things at a portfolio as a whole, all the way up from there. So, and this is really possible because we're taking the information and storing it in Smartsheet, making it accessible to the end users to pull in from there. I know we're coming up on time, a little bit over, but I wanted to show you, again, a lot of the art of the possible. I'm going to stop sharing here, everyone. Wouldn't be a demo without something coming through. So I think we kind of last started with a question around RFI and quotes back level bids. Short answer, yes. It's likely. It just kind of depends on how you want to manage those within there. It's likely that we need to basically kind of create some formulas within. So we're going to go through rapid pace on these ones, but again, please pop them in. Next question was Smartsheet ability to apply security at a column level. In a couple of ways. You may need to leverage things like dynamic view, which is a way for you to create a sheet and then limit the scope from that. That's how you can select which columns are visible to a user. So if you're talking about like budget management, that might be inside of there. We'll send some assets afterwards from the content were released in there. So that's Andre's question. You can get a little bit more granular that. There's other things like collections and work apps that might work in a similar format as well. Karen has asked, use case how to use Bridge versus Data Shuttle or Data Mesh. Great question. So Bridge for the group is Smartsheet's kind of low-code, no-code API integration platform. We often see Bridge builds be used for pulling in things like budget or financial information, maybe using things like Sage or SAP or Bid Tracer, Building Connected, for example, or even things like Procore. So if you're managing a lot of your projects or details from like Procore, and you want to take or sync information from Procore into Smartsheet, Bridge would be a great mechanism of doing that if you're looking for a fully automated experience. Data Shuttle is really good for like a low code, no code option for kind of a semi-automated flow within. As long as you get data and export, you can load that in. So, and there's other API tools. Again, Bridge is Smartsheet's one, so a really good option. Data Mesh is a possibility. Data Mesh is going to be things like, I like calling it like a supercharged VLOOKUP or index match, again, to reference information between. So possible to within that use case. So to Karen's question. So Bill's question, let me see, working a better streamline. documents for the company. So argument. Okay. So yeah, we'll send some resources over to you. Bill, looks like Gabby's kind of answered that over. Same with David. So yeah, we'll definitely make sure we get some of these resources over, some samples. Of course, your account reps at Smartsheet will certainly reach out to you with some updates. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to ping us and the team. We can have kind of a more one-on-one from there. I'm going to hop over to the Q&A or to the chat because I think there were some questions in there within. So security column, I think we answered that with data shuttle or dynamic view. Multiple projects under schedule with parent lines and children. Gantt show up and ascending. So Kiana, I think this is your question. So the current way is either if you have a master schedule sheet with your projects and some of the details in, that's kind of like currently what's available. The alternate would be if you have a schedule per project, kind of what I showed in mine, you could create a report or a portfolio report that pulls those projects in to roll up. And so that might be a way, and that might be a quick answer, maybe at least to your question, and we can review in greater detail on that impact. I do know as a pseudo teaser that there will be some updates to the Gantt view and the functionalities from Smartsheet that might give you some additional flexibility around setting that hierarchy and the relationship cross project and cross ranges. So yeah, other questions? Great. I think that's the last of the Linger ones. Again, apologies for the technical hiccup as that came in. So for the group, I'm just going to pop back up the show just with next steps for those that are curious. But yeah, this is kind of a first of many sessions, I think I would say, that we're looking to kind of help support for y'all. So again, we'll be providing a recording of this session. You'll get that lovely blip where I'm just a black screen or hopefully frozen with a funny face. But feel free to reach out to your accounts team within Smartsheet if you know who that is. Great. Everyone, we've done some mapping, so they may be reaching out to you afterwards to answer maybe high-level questions, and certainly coordinating sessions if you want more of a tailored kind of one-on-one with our group to kind of review your use case and show the art of the possible. There's a lot of really great resources in the Smartsheet community. It's a shameless plug. You guys may have kind of explored that as well and see. Again, in the future, we're going to have some more specific breakouts, spend a little bit more time in the weeds on some of these content. So, if there's any specific areas of your interest, if you really want to dive into like the procurement stages or maybe safeties and the inspections, those will be things that we'll be kind of doing up in a future survey or series. So keep an eye out. This is kind of your intro and overview. Hopefully you've got some designs and inspiration, some thoughts around how you can optimize your workflow or maybe bring some tools in. Again, thank you for your time, Chris with Optimum and partner with Smartsheet. Thank you so much for bearing with us and running through. It was a pleasure being able to kind of host this session and kind of show you guys the art of the possible. So with that, we'll wrap up the session from today, and we'll be on the lookout for some messaging from the team. And of course, as a Smartsheet product evolves, we'll come up with more use cases for you to discover. Thank you so much.